This is a narration performed by AI based on the content written by author Nguyen Hong Trang. Welcome, everyone. I am absolutely thrilled to be your guide today as we walk through the standard operating procedure for our internal budget control process. This whole system was proudly put together by our finance and accounting department, and you can really just think of today's explainer as your ultimate map to financial discipline. And hey, I want to be clear right up front. Our goal here isn't to tie your hands or restrict your work. It's actually the exact opposite. We want to empower your team to help our company grow in a way that's responsible and totally transparent. So let's just dive right into it. We've got a really great roadmap for our session today. First, we'll start with a high-level overview of the whole process, and then we'll get into exactly how to manage any additional budget requests. After that, we'll dive into the actual procurement and usage of funds, followed closely by how we monitor those funds and handle payments. To wrap things up, we'll look at the responsibility matrix so everyone knows exactly who does what, and then we'll tackle a few frequently asked questions. All right, let's jump right into Section 1, the actual foundation of our financial discipline. So before we even think about spending a single dime, we really need to understand where a budget actually comes from. It doesn't just magically appear out of thin air, right? We have to look at the life cycle of company funds. Literally, everything starts with step 1. Creating your department's annual operation plan, or AOP. Every single budget request you make has to originate from that approved AOP. From there, we slide into step 2, which is budget planning. This is where we estimate your financial needs based on that plan. Step 3 is where the rubber meets the road and you execute your specific action plans. And finally, as you're doing all that executing, step 4 naturally happens. A specific budget demand arises in your daily operations. Okay, so what actually happens when that daily budget demand pops up? Well, every single employee has to follow this straightforward 5-step workflow. First, the budget demand is officially recognized. Second, and honestly, this is the most critical part, you have to perform a budget check to ensure the funds are actually there. Third, you proceed with budget usage, meaning you go ahead and make the purchase. Fourth, you move on to cost reporting and getting the payment ready. And lastly, step 5 is ongoing budget control and monitoring. The main takeaway here, skipping steps is absolutely, strictly not allowed. You literally cannot use a budget without checking it first. Moving right along to Section 2, let's talk about managing additional budget requests, or basically how we handle the unexpected. We all know business moves fast, and sometimes you're going to need funds that just weren't in the original plan. But listen, if your department needs extra money, it's not quite as simple as just asking for it. Your request has to meet some very specific conditions. You have to prove that it will either increase revenue, provide some serious cost savings, or prevent a major risk down the line. On top of that, you absolutely must submit a formal written proposal to justify the need. And yes, this applies in literally all cases, even if it's a direct instruction from the director themselves. Now, I need you to pay very, very close attention to what we call our golden rule. If revenue falls below the min threshold, contingency budgets must not be used. Let me say that one more time just so it really sinks in. If company revenue drops below our minimum threshold, all contingency budgets are completely locked. This is an absolute, non-negotiable anchor for our financial safety as a company. But hey, what if you run into a situation where your budget is totally tapped out in one area, or a line item is already completely used up? Well, you do have the option to reallocate funds from other budget items that are unused or underutilized. There are 3 specific ways you can do this. Number 1, you can reallocate within the exact same category. Number 2, you can move it to a different category as long as it's within your same department. And number 3, reallocating across entirely different departments. Now, if you're trying to do that third one, moving money across departments, that strictly requires board of directors approval. No exceptions. And for all 3 of these scenarios, it is a hard requirement that you shoot a formal email to the accounting department so they can get the system updated. Let's head into Section 3. This is all about procurement and budget usage, ensuring we are executing with compliance. So now that we know how the planning works, how do we actually go about spending the money by the book? When our central purchasing department buys things, they follow 2 distinct tracks. For any food materials, they keep incredibly strict control over portions based on the COGS, that's the cost of goods sold formula, and they tightly control the purchase price against the budget. But for non-food items, it's a bit different. For those, they need to update consumption norms, create periodic purchase requests, and do regular inventory checks to explain any variances that pop up. But what about specialized departments doing their own purchasing, like IT or HR? If that's you, there is a very strict 8-step mechanism you've got to follow. This is just to make sure everything is fair, the quality is there, and we can track the finances. Step 1. You must get both your sample and your price approved. Step 2, you move forward with contract signing, using our standard templates, of course, or you get a legal review. Step 3, you execute the actual purchase. And Step 4, you make sure the vendor and product codes are officially generated in the system. Continuing right along with that self-purchasing sequence, here are the final 4 steps. Step 5, you need to store those approved samples so we have them for reference. Step 6, create the official purchase request and purchase order right in the system. Step 7, once the goods actually arrive, confirm the warehouse receipt. And finally, Step 8, proceed to the payment process. Let me be extremely clear on this. You have to follow these exact 8 steps in this exact sequence. Do not jump around or change the order.
All right, Section 4 is all about monitoring, reporting, and payment. This is where we ensure total transparency.
Because really, spending the money is only half the job, right? In this transparency phase, we track and verify all those expenditures. The finance department actually sets up dedicated Google Drive folders for every single department to track your actual spending against your approved budget. And yes, every department is responsible for tracking their own usage in there. Oh, and one super important note. If you rack up expenses in a given month, but the final payment documents are delayed for some reason, you still have to submit a cost summary to accounting. That way they can accrue those expenses properly and keep the books accurate. And that brings us to a massively important enforcement rule. Accounting is monitoring everything through Power BI reports that update daily. The absolute, undeniable rule is this. If that Power BI report shows a budget overrun for your department, accounting will automatically block the payment. Full stop. There's no getting around it. This system is literally designed to halt overspending before the money ever leaves the company accounts.
Section 5, the responsibility matrix, how we all work together to make this happen.
You know, a system is really only as strong as the people running it. While finance is always going to oversee the big macro view, the ultimate responsibility for budget checking falls entirely on you, the user department. Honestly, this is the single most critical control gate in the entire process. Before you sign a contract, before you order a service, you have to verify that the funds are available. You are quite literally the first and most important line of defense against overspending. Finally, let's wrap things up with Section 6, clearing the confusion by tackling some frequently asked questions. To close out our training today, let's preemptively answer the most common things we hear. The very first questions new budget owners almost always ask are, what exactly does my budget cover? And what specific line items are actually included for my team? Well, the answer to that is super straightforward and centralized. You just need to check the specific Google Drive folder that's been assigned to your department. Inside that folder, you're going to find all the signed approvals and the exact profit and loss, or P&L, allocations. That document details every single category and the exact amounts granted to your team. Basically, your Drive folder is your ultimate source of truth. Next, people usually wonder about the actual mechanics. They ask, how is the budget controlled in practice? What happens if there's a disagreement? And what do we do about out-of-budget expenses? So we use what's called a 3-party control system. That involves the user department making the request, the managing department overseeing the category, and the finance department providing the final verification. Now, if the user and managing departments butt heads or disagree, you just need to email finance so they can step in and resolve it. As for out-of-budget expenses, you've got to use one of those 3 forms of budget reallocation we talked about earlier, shifting funds within your category, within your department, or across departments with board approval. And our final common question is all about succession planning. How do new hires actually receive budget handovers and authority from staff members who are leaving? It's pretty simple but crucial. The outgoing staff member has a strict responsibility to hand over all budget details and tracking files before their last day. Then, the new employee just needs to send a quick email to the finance and accounting department to request access to the master Google Drive folders. And speaking of which, if you have any lingering questions after today's session, please reach out to finance and accounting directly via email. Remember, financial discipline isn't about red tape. It's about clarity and it's about teamwork. A budget isn't just a bunch of numbers on a spreadsheet. It's literally the exact blueprint of our company's future. So the question is, how effectively will you build your piece of it today? Thank you so much for your time and happy planning.